Horatio Nelson, master of the seas. Imagine commanding the world's oceans before your 15th birthday. That was Horatio Nelson's beginning. Born in Norfolk in 1758, he joined the Royal Navy at just 12 years old, armed with little more than courage and relentless ambition. Through storms, wounds, and years at sea, Nelson rode through the ranks not by privilege but by pure daring. His breakthrough came at the Battle of the Nile in 1798, when he trapped and annihilated the French fleet, cutting off Napoleon's dream of dominating the Mediterranean. 7 years later, facing impossible odds again at Trafalgar, Nelson showcased his fearless inventiveness. His tactic, breaking the enemy line head-on, was so radical it stunned Europe. Even grievously injured, blind in one eye and missing an arm, he refused to retreat from command. As broadsides thundered and the air filled with smoke, he led until his final breath on the deck of HMS Victory. His death came at the very moment of triumph. Britain's navy had destroyed Napoleon's, and the seas belonged to Britain for a century. Nelson's brilliance rewrote the rules of naval warfare. His mix of audacity and discipline created the blueprint for modern naval command. More than a hero in uniform, he became a living symbol of fearlessness. The man who proved that vision and courage can steer a nation through any storm.
Arthur Wellesley, Duke of Wellington, Napoleon's equal. Cool under fire, calculating under chaos, Arthur Wellesley was the man who beat Napoleon at his own game. Born in 1769 to an Anglo-Irish family, he wasn't a prodigy or a prodigal. His brilliance was forged, not innate. As a young officer in India, he learned the art of logistics, timing, and discipline. Victories there teaching him that genius in war rests on preparation more than passion. When Europe erupted again under Napoleon, Wellington carried those lessons home. During the Peninsular War, he faced the seemingly invincible French armies across Spain and Portugal. Patient, precise, and unshakably calm, he mastered defensive warfare, letting the enemy break upon him like waves against rock. His troops came to trust his composure more than any speech. Then came Waterloo in 1815. Outnumbered and battered, he held his ground all day under relentless assault until the Prussian army arrived to tip the balance. When the smoke settled, Napoleon's empire was gone, Britain standing at its peak. Wellington became the Iron Duke, later serving twice as prime minister, a soldier-statesman whose poise defined national character. His rule was simple: hard-pounding, gentlemen, let's see who can pound the longest. It's the spirit of endurance that still echoes through the British Army. Cool heads, disciplined hearts, and victory earned through unshakable will.
Bernard Law Montgomery, the desert fox's foe. Few generals have inspired such fierce loyalty, or equally fierce debate, as Bernard Law Montgomery. Born in 1887 and forged by the mud and terror of the First World War, Monty carried those scars into the next. Stern, ultra-disciplined, and famously blunt, he believed that morale was a weapon every bit as powerful as artillery. In 1942, Britain was reeling. Rommel's unstoppable Africa Corps had driven Allied forces back again and again. Then, Montgomery took command of the Eighth Army. He didn't promise miracles. He promised order. Training was redrilled, supply lines overhauled, confidence rebuilt. And when the Battle of El Alamein began, his plan was meticulous. Overwhelming artillery, coordinated armor, relentless pressure. After 12 days of brutal fighting in the barren Egyptian desert, he broke Rommel's line. Winston Churchill declared it the end of the beginning. El Alamein didn't just stop the Axis advance, it gave the Allies belief that victory was possible. Montgomery could be arrogant, even abrasive, but behind the ego was a man who understood soldiers. Clear orders, fierce discipline, and faith in the plan. Under his leadership, the British Army learned that courage isn't only charging forward. It's having the patience to prepare and the confidence to see it through. That calculated courage turned the tide of a world war.
Robert Clive, Clive of India, Empire's architect. Robert Clive's story begins not in triumph, but in exile.
an unruly young man sent to India as a last chance for direction. Born in 1725, he arrived as a lowly clerk for the East India Company, restless and impatient with paperwork. When war broke out, he traded his quill for a sword and discovered an audacity few could match. By 1757, Clive faced his ultimate test at the Battle of Plassey. Outnumbered roughly 8-1 by the Nawab of Bengal's massive army, he played not just the battlefield, but the chessboard of politics. Through secret negotiations and sheer nerve, he divided his enemies, struck fast in a thunderstorm, and turned overwhelming odds into victory. In a single day, Bengal, the richest province in India, fell under British control. That win didn't simply expand trade, it shifted global power. Britain's foothold in India became an empire. But Clive's name carries both glory and controversy. Military genius entwined with exploitation. Later accused of corruption, he defended himself fiercely before Parliament, declaring he had done great things for his country, and history largely agreed. Clive's fearless cunning changed not just maps, but centuries of destiny. He embodied the ruthless confidence that built Britain's empire, and the moral complexity that would one day make it question its own greatness.
Thomas Fairfax, the quiet revolutionary. Not all heroes roar. Some change history through calm resolve, and Thomas Fairfax was one of them. Born an aristocrat in 1612, he could have taken the easy path of loyalty to King Charles I. Instead, he sided with Parliament, believing that justice and discipline mattered more than birthright. When the English Civil War tore the nation apart, Fairfax became commander of a reformed force, the New Model Army. It was revolutionary. Soldiers promoted for merit, not lineage. Drilled for professionalism, not plunder. He gave them a simple creed: obedience, faith, and fairness. In 1645, that creed proved its power at the Battle of Naseby. Outnumbered and outflanked, Fairfax's coordinated tactics and unshakable discipline crushed the Royalist army, effectively ending the king's hopes of victory. Yet his greatest act of courage came afterward. While many around him demanded blood and absolute rule, Fairfax refused to be a tyrant in victory. He stepped back when Cromwell's regime turned authoritarian, proving that conscience could outweigh ambition. Though his name is quieter than Cromwell's, Fairfax shaped the modern idea of an ethical, professional army, one loyal to law rather than to kings or generals. In a century of fanaticism, he showed that real power lies in restraint.
James Wolfe, the conqueror of Quebec. James Wolfe was barely 14 when he joined the British Army, slight in build but fierce in ambition. Born in 1727, he rose quickly through merit, earning a reputation for imagination and relentless drive. He believed battles were won by surprise, precision, and morale, not mere numbers. By 1759, during the 7 Years' War, Britain's vast empire hung in the balance. France still held Quebec, the stronghold that controlled North America. Wolfe devised a plan so audacious it bordered on madness, scaling the near-vertical cliffs guarding the city under cover of darkness. At dawn, his men appeared where no army should have been, the Plains of Abraham. As musket fire shattered the morning, Wolfe led from the front, urging his troops forward until he was struck 3 times. Mortally wounded, he lived long enough to hear that the French were retreating. Only then did he whisper, "Now God be praised, I die in peace." His victory at Quebec secured Canada for Britain and reshaped the continent's destiny. But it was his death in triumph that made him immortal, a symbol of courage, youth, and devotion to duty. James Wolfe didn't just win a city, he embodied the idea that bravery and sacrifice can alter the course of nations.
Richard Francis Burton, the soldier, scholar, explorer. Few men lived as many lives as Richard Francis Burton. Born in 1821, he was a soldier, linguist, and restless adventurer whose curiosity knew no borders. While others sought comfort, Burton chased knowledge, even where it could kill him. He mastered more than 25 languages, studied religions firsthand, and defied both convention and empire in pursuit of understanding. In 1853, he took one of his greatest risks. Disguised as a Muslim pilgrim, he entered Mecca, then forbidden to outsiders. Exposure meant certain death, yet his disguise held. Later, as leader of an East African expedition, he trekked through disease, heat, and hostility to map the mysterious source of the Nile. Burton's courage wasn't just physical. He faced cultural boundaries with equal fearlessness, translating sacred texts and cataloging the customs of peoples the West barely understood. Some called him reckless, others heretic, but none doubted his intellect. He returned to Britain not with treasure, but with knowledge, maps, manuscripts, and insights that challenged stereotypes of his age. He showed that courage could come from the mind as much as the sword. Richard Burton's legacy endures as the archetype of the adventurer scholar, bold, questioning, and unafraid to cross every border in the search for truth.
Charles Chinese Gordon, Faith and Defiance. Charles Gordon was a soldier who believed battles were fought as much in the soul as on the field. Born in 1833, he rose through the British Army with iron discipline and deep religious faith. In China, during the Taiping Rebellion, his bravery and unshakable sense of justice earned him the title Chinese Gordon and global fame. But his defining test came years later, far from China in the Sudanese city of Khartoum. When rebellion erupted in 1884, Gordon was sent to evacuate civilians. Instead, he chose to stay, believing it his duty to defend the city against overwhelming forces loyal to the Mahdi. For 10 relentless months, his small garrison held out, outnumbered, cut off, and starving. Offers of rescue came too late. Gordon, calm and defiant to the end, refused escape, greeting his attackers with dignity when the walls finally fell in January 1885. His death shocked Britain and turned him into a national martyr. To many Victorians, Gordon embodied moral courage, faith unbroken even in defeat. He stood for duty without compromise, conviction without fear. Chinese Gordon proved that heroism isn't measured by survival, but by the strength to stand alone when every hope has vanished.
John Churchill, Duke of Marlborough, the grand strategist. John Churchill was more than a commander. He was a master of both politics and war. Born in 1650 to modest gentry, he learned early that survival at court required as much strategy as any battlefield. Serving under multiple monarchs, sometimes rivals, sometimes foes, he navigated treacherous politics with poise, patience, and charm. When Europe faced the threat of Louis XIV's expansion, Churchill emerged as Britain's indispensable general. In 1704, at the Battle of Blenheim, he led an Allied army across rivers, marshes, and enemy lines to strike deep into Bavaria. Outnumbered, yet precise, he executed dazzling maneuvers that crushed the French and Bavarian forces, saving Vienna and halting the march of French domination. For the next decade, his campaigns, from Ramillies to Oudenarde and Malplaquet, defined logistics, coordination, and mobility. He kept vast coalitions united and armies fed, proving that foresight could win wars before the first shot. Though political rivals later pushed him aside, his military brilliance endured. Marlborough became the model for the modern professional general, agile in mind, disciplined in command, and ruthless in execution. His legacy is the art of strategy itself, knowing not just how to win a battle, but how to make victory reshape the world.
Admiral Sir John Jellicoe, guardian of Britain's lifeline. Some heroes win through fire and fury. John Jellicoe won through restraint. Born in 1859 and raised within the Royal Navy's iron discipline, he was known less for swagger than for thought. A meticulous strategist, he studied every variable of sea warfare, the lines of fire, the winds, the mathematics of survival. By 1916, midway through the First World War, Britain's empire depended entirely on its navy. When the German high seas fleet steamed out to challenge that power, Jellicoe met it at the Battle of Jutland,
the largest naval engagement of the war. In a storm of shell fire and smoke, he faced the nightmare every commander dreaded, risking the entire fleet in a single day. While critics later accused him of caution, Jellicoe's calm decisions kept disaster at bay. He maneuvered with precision, avoided German torpedo ambushes, and ensured that Britain's fleet, the very lifeline of the nation, survived intact. The Germans never dared sail out again. It wasn't the kind of victory that made headlines, but it made history. In an age when glory shouted, Jellicoe's courage whispered, the quiet nerve to stay rational when others demanded recklessness. His legacy endures as proof that, in war, patience can be the bravest act of all.
William Slim, the forgotten victor. William Slim's greatness didn't come from privilege or bravado. It came from quiet strength. Born in 1891 to modest beginnings in Bristol, he joined the army without pedigree or connections. What he did have was empathy, toughness, and absolute belief in his men. By 1942, the British forces in Burma were broken. The Japanese army had swept through the jungles, morale was shattered, disease was rampant, and retreat seemed endless. Then Slim took command. He didn't promise glory, he promised renewal. He rebuilt his army from the inside out, tending to both discipline and dignity. He made soldiers believe again that they could endure the impossible. During the Burma campaign, Slim turned defeat into triumph. In 1944, at Imphal and Kohima, his troops, once in retreat, stood firm and repelled Japan's fiercest offensives. Against overwhelming odds and brutal conditions, Slim's calm leadership reclaimed Burma and shifted the balance of the war in Asia. He refused comfort, living among his men, sharing their hardships, earning their devotion through example rather than rank. His success was not flashy, but foundational, an army transformed by human respect and relentless preparation. Field Marshal William Slim remains the British soldier's general, the man who proved that empathy and endurance can win battles steel alone cannot. His quiet victory saved millions and still shapes leadership lessons worldwide.
Hugh Dowding, the defender of Britain's skies. When invasion loomed over Britain in 1940, one man quietly shaped the shield that would stop it. Air Chief Marshal Hugh Dowding, a reserved engineer turned strategist, believed brains, not bravado, would win the coming war. Born in 1882, he climbed the RAF ranks through intellect and moral conviction, not politics or charm. Dowding built something entirely new, Fighter Command, a coordinated web of radar stations, command centers in swift response squadrons. When others scoffed at the untested technology, he trusted it. While some begged him to exhaust pilots with constant patrols, he ordered discipline, conserve strength, strike only when precision guaranteed results. Then came the Battle of Britain. Outnumbered, his young pilots faced the full power of the Luftwaffe. But thanks to Dowding's system, they were always in the right place at the right time. For months they fought above English fields, until, battered and stunned, Germany turned away. The invasion never came. Dowding received little public credit at the time. His calm pragmatism didn't make for easy headlines, but his creation saved a nation. More than a commander, he was a man of conscience who refused to waste lives for vanity. In the end, history proved him right. Hugh Dowding's vision and moral courage kept Britain free when the world's darkest clouds gathered overhead.
T.E. Lawrence, rebel with a cause. Thomas Edward Lawrence, part scholar, part soldier, was never built for convention. Born in 1888, he studied archaeology and Arabic long before war found him. When it did, he was sent to the Middle East, where intellect met rebellion. In 1917, he joined the Arab Revolt against the Ottoman Empire, not as a conqueror, but as a bridge between worlds. Dressed in Arab robes, fluent in their language and customs, he understood that victory lay in unity, not orders from London. Lawrence used speed, deception, and mobility to turn scattered tribes into a lightning-fast guerrilla force. They blew up railways, struck supply lines, and vanished into the desert before the enemy could react. He rode thousands of miles through scorching heat, battling exhaustion and doubt, yet his strategy helped open the road to Damascus and collapse Ottoman control across Arabia. But triumph brought disillusionment. The secret treaties that divided the region betrayed the independence he'd promised his allies, a truth that haunted him for the rest of his life. Lawrence became myth while trying to escape it, the Lawrence of Arabia who proved brains and empathy could outfight brute strength. His legacy endures as that rare fusion of warrior and philosopher, a rebel not for chaos, but for understanding, whose courage was as intellectual as it was physical.
Admiral Andrew Cunningham, the sea's relentless commander. Admiral Sir Andrew Cunningham was the kind of leader sailors trusted instinctively, a man of few words, sharp judgment, and unflinching resolve. Born in 1883, he spent his youth mastering every aspect of naval life, from gunnery to tactics. By the Second World War, he had become Britain's foremost sea commander in the perilous Mediterranean theater, where a single mistake could doom entire campaigns. Cunningham believed aggression, if guided by precision, could beat superior numbers. In 1940 at Toronto, he approved a daring operation few thought possible, a night attack by carrier-launched biplanes on the Italian fleet. The audacious strike crippled 3 battleships and rewrote the playbook of naval warfare, showing the world how aircraft could decide battles at sea. Just months later, in the Battle of Cape Matapan, Cunningham outmaneuvered and annihilated a powerful Italian squadron, proving again that boldness paired with brains wins oceans. He refused to abandon trapped Allied soldiers in Crete, risking ships and reputation to save them, declaring, "It takes 3 years to build a ship, 3 centuries to build a tradition." Cunningham's victories broke Italy's naval power and secured vital lifelines through the Mediterranean. His fearless innovation redefined maritime strategy and paved the path to modern carrier warfare. Calm, cunning, and relentless, he commanded not through glamour, but through judgment, the steady hand that kept the seas in British hands when the world's tide hung in doubt.
Edmund Allenby, the conqueror of Jerusalem. Field Marshal Edmund Allenby brought both strength and sensitivity to a war too often defined by brutality. Born in 1861, he was a professional cavalry officer, disciplined, methodical, and deeply aware that war demanded both intellect and humanity. When the First World War stalemated in Europe, Allenby was sent to command the Egyptian expeditionary force against the Ottoman Empire. He transformed it from a weary garrison into a mobile, coordinated army. In 1917, his campaign advanced through the Sinai and captured Jerusalem, a victory that electrified the Allied world. Yet Allenby showed unusual humility. Instead of entering the holy city on horseback like a conqueror, he walked in quietly, hat removed, as a sign of respect for its sacred history. The following year, at the Battle of Megiddo, 1918, his strategy of deception, swift cavalry strikes, and tight logistics shattered Ottoman power. Within weeks, Ottoman forces across the Middle East collapsed, changing the region's map forever. Allenby's blend of tactical precision and moral restraint set a rare standard. He proved that victory need not come at the cost of dignity, that empathy and discipline could share the same uniform. Remembered as the conqueror of Jerusalem, he was, above all, the soldier who demonstrated that honor can be mightier than pride.